Hello and good afternoon. I'm sitting in Japan as we speak on a little private travel, an adventure that my wife and I have been planning for years. It was delayed by the pandemic, and we're finally getting a chance to do this Japan trip. And so I'm very fortunate to have good Wi-Fi here, able to present this to you. But one small problem is I forgot my wine flight, so I'll be counting on you to taste these wines with me. I tasted them via Coravin when I poured my samples on Sunday, but I left them in my office, in my wisdom, in my hurry to get to the airport. And so I'm just being honest. I don't have the wines with me like I planned. I had it all planned out. I really plan in the future, but I'll count on you for some comments about these wines as they've evolved nicely, as they always do, in our small 2-ounce little pours. And we've got a nice audience from many different places that have joined us today. So I hope everybody got their wines okay. I know of one person that did not, but she'll be watching this video. As always, if UPS fails us in any way, you're able to watch this video because we record this video and we're able to send that to you if you missed it. But this is actually going to be a broadcast at the same time on Facebook. And so just give me 30 seconds to post this to Facebook right now. Our Facebook page for Merchant of Wine should be easy to find if you're a Facebook customer. And every Zoom into Wine we intend to have there. Sometimes we do have technical glitches and problems, so we may actually post the video there after the Zoom is live. All right. Now, just by a little conversation with the group, because you're part of the Zoom here, some Zooms I've been on, you're static, you're kind of in the background, you're watching people talk, but this is an interactive show, and you are all part of the audience. So I'd love to just kind of take a group view of the room here. How many of you have been to Italy, to Tuscany, maybe to Brunello? All right, good. So just kind of set the stage. Miranda knows how to raise her hand electronically. That's great. Good to see you, Miranda. Maria, Janine. Did I pronounce that correct, Janine? Thomas, thank you. Mark, Laura, Wendy, hi. Gia, Jamie, Jill, Lisa, Kathy, fantastic, great audience. Hi, Setsuko. We've never been closer. I'll be in Tokyo soon. Brunello to Montalcino and the topic of Italian wine. This is a really exciting wine zone that the world is paying close attention to. And you know that by the type of acquisitions that have been made recently. Have been slowing down, of course, now that money's actually getting expensive. But for many years, hedge funds were using this very low interest moment to make acquisitions, because did you know that Brunello de Montalcino maintains the highest average bottle price of any region in the wine world? You think about some of the most expensive Bordeaux's, and but there's volume of Bordeaux that sells for pennies, and so really brings down that bottle average somewhere in the $8 to $9 range as an average bottle of Bordeaux. Whereas Brunello de Montalcino actually sells for an average of approximately $45 to $55. So it really does maintain a high price value, and that's something the investment firms are looking at, saying, okay, there's great potential here. Land acquisition makes a lot of sense, and so they've been hot on the trail of anyone that's weak, anyone that needs to sell, anyone that wants to sell. But that number of people that want to sell is pretty few, and the number of buyers are many. So in many regards, it's a pretty protected spot because the Italians really want to keep it, Italian owned. And there's lots of families that know each other. And if they can sell it to one of their friendly families, they probably will explore that option. But if the temptation is large enough from the hedge funds, and they can take care of future generations, they're going to do that too. So with that, let's go ahead and also cover something else. We often publish these Zooms far out in advance. We definitely had an order in mind, but the reality is a little different than what the photo is. So I'm going to now send a message through the chat box. Hopefully this will get us started with lots of chat activity. But these are the 4 wines and the order that they're going to be presented in. So we're going to start off with the wine number 1 being Altesano, wine number 2, La Ragnai. Then we'll go to Sassetti Permioli. Then we'll go to Ciro Pensenti. So that's the order that we're in. I've put that in the chat box. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 to align with the jars that you have at home. If you also would like to explore these wines a little bit, and up in the right-hand corner, there's this little Q up here. You tap that Q, or you could go into the Zoom into Wine link. There's a couple different ways to access the wine information, but if you tap the Q, you'll get a search bar and you can type in the name of the wine and go straight to it. Or if you go to our Zoom into Wine page and you see the Zoom wines that we have, this is the picture of the bottles, but that order that I just sent you is a little different than what we've got from left to right, okay? I have to say that a couple of times because people often aren't here when I say that. So there they are. I'm taking a moment to employ, but you can see the wines here. You can copy that information, put it in the queue. Before we also get started, let me just make a little pre-event commercial because a very important tasting is coming. I do return from Japan next Wednesday, so we're doing a rebroadcast of Shen Blue and Katana, 2 of the most amazing, brilliant women in the world of wine, who are friends, got to spend an hour chatting with me about the wine industry and their outlook and their ideas. It was the fastest hour I've ever had a conversation but it was really, really powerful and beautiful. And so we're going to rebroadcast that. It's not too late to join that. It is also free to join without the wines, but if you want to get the wines, we still have those available. We do a little Portugal Zoom coming up with my friend who's a Portuguese wine importer, and we kind of talk about the business of Portuguese wine and a number of up-and-coming brands that she is representing. But the big one that we have coming is our Learn About Wine Presents Italy. And this is kind of a change because we used to call these STARS events. Now STARS events really mean live events that we have in Los Angeles where we have the winemakers come in large number. So we're calling these Learn About Wine Presents, and you got to be able to purchase those from the Learn About Wine site. So can you guys still see can you see the Learn About Wine site as I'm going down it? Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. And so we have 6 winemaking personalities, wine professionals joining us for this special night of Italian wines, kind of traversing all of Italy. And we on purpose kind of left Brunello out of our Stars of Italian Wine because we had in mind to do this Brunello profile tonight. So we get to cover some really different topics and some different experts. Anytime you get to talk with Oliver McCrum, he's an amazing genius of wine importing, and really is why there's a lot of these small, cool Italian wines coming in from Italy. We're going to spend some time with one of my favorite producers in Nama. And in fact, we're going to meet Alessio, but we're going to spend more time with his dad. We're going to spend time with Luigi Coppa, look at his 60, 80-year-old Barbera vineyard. My friend Sarah Klein, Italian specialist, Italian speaking, knower of all things Italian wine. She's worked in the Italian wine industry all of her life, and she really has great comprehension. And she represents Tenuta Setta Ponte. And this is one of my all-time favorite go-to values, Croniolo. I call it a value because it's a big scoring wine that's in the 30s, $30 range, $30 to $40 range. And before, we've shown the Areno, which is a $100 bottle. But Croniolo just really over delivers. It's a great value and a great producer, and they have a really historic property. So you want to catch that wine. Amidio Pepe, if you've never heard of it before, this is a really special Montepulciano di Abruzzo producer, and maybe, you could argue one of the top 5 names in Italian wine. And you really, this is collectible, investable. The value of this wine clicks up 10 to 15% every year. Put it in your cellar. I'm going to show the 2012 in this presentation that's close to $200 a bottle, and in glorious state. In fact, I love the really old whites from this estate too. If I could make it a Stars of Italian white wine, I'd be showing their white wine, which really is magic as well. And then the absolutely spectacular, beautiful Alessandra Cassini, owner of Bindi Serengardi. And we're going to show off the Gran Selezione and really dive in a little deeper on what's happening in Chianti and how they kind of created this level of Chianti Gran Selezione to compete with Brunello de Montalcino that's been eating their lunch for many, many years. So really a special presentation, and I wanted to make sure you knew about it. It's coming up on the 15th of March, and it's still of great value. There's a 2-flight kit special for $80. Makes it a lot of fun, and the bottle kits are also available. Okay. All right, let's get started drinking some wine, some Brunello de Montalcino. And if you have any comments or questions, yes, Marie, you could go ahead and, if you have 4 glasses, you could pour them all. Absolutely. If you have 1 glass, let's start with the wine number 1, which, as previously discussed, wine number 1 is from Altazeno. This is a Brunello de Montalcino 2015, and I've got a slideshow to take us through it. I'm hoping right now on your screen you can see my slideshow. Zoom into wine. Does everybody see that? I hope that's working out. And this is our presentation on Brunello de Montalcino. Saw a couple of hands go up about people that have actually visited Tuscany and the beautiful painted hills of Tuscany. We'll see a map in a little bit to kind of talk about where Brunello is, but this is a really prized wine region. It's, you can refer, if you had to refer to 3 of the greatest wines in Italy, you wouldn't be wrong in saying they all start with the letter B. Brunello, Barolo, Barbaresco, but only one of those is from Tuscany. The other 2 are from Piedmont. Brunello is the name of the wine. The area is called Montalcino, and that's the region. And to be called a Brunello means something. There's time locks that need to be put in place, and you cannot release a Brunello until it is 5 years old. So they kind of can get them in a boat when they're 4 years and 9 months old, and it takes a few months to get them over here. But there's definitely some time locks involved with being able to call it Brunello do Montalcino. So if they make wine in this region and doesn't qualify for Brunello status, they can declassify it to Rosso. And there are some great Rossos, and there's some pretty poor Rossos as well. The brand name really probably matters a lot when you're considering Rosso. So obviously this wine's known for its deep color, complex flavors, massive tannins, and really powerful kind of characteristic. These wines need time in the cellar. Of course, we talked, it's got to be 5 years old, 4 of them in the cellars of the winery. 2 years of that time in oak barrels. That's a minimum. Some play with that a little bit, go out, extend it out a little bit further. And then what type of oak barrels? Some are using small 220-liter barrels. Some are using the larger wood. It all kind of comes down to philosophy of the winery. Wines are characterized by their earthy, herbal fruit notes with flavors of dark cherry, blackberry, and plum. Brunello is known for its ageability and how it ages gracefully, like all of us, and improves with flavor and complexity with many years in the bottle and many minutes in the glass. I love to decant these wines, and as we put them into this 2-ounce little decanters, there was a slow micro oxygenation occurring, like it's been opened for about a half hour. And I think that pouring them out of those decanters into the glass, you're tasting them at a really wonderful spot. That's been my last 2+ years of experience with these decanters. When they work, sometimes they fail us, they leak a little bit. And if they did, we apologize, but that is natural. We are pouring these and locking them down pretty hard. Some of them are pretty damn tough to open as it is, but that's necessary. Here's a map of all of Tuscany. You can see the vastness of the Chianti zone. Chianti also made from Sangiovese, but by the time you get to Montalcino, you change soil types, you've got a little different altitude, you've got some different rocky minerality in the soils, and the clone of the Sangiovese changes a little bit. It's a mutation, and it's got slightly thicker skins, and it is known as Sangiovese Grosso, and it is a bolder, bigger, more powerful version of the Sangiovese grape, and it's a beautiful place. It's very spoken for. There's no real new ways to expand the zone, but there's producers that have vineyards in different sections, different areas, north, east, west, south, and each family kind of has a feeling for where, the best fruit is coming from. And, it's that kind of moves on the map depending on where we are at, with a couple of the popular producers and some acquisitions and some revelations in winemaking and brand name winemakers that are getting involved in different things. There's a lot of different financial interests now too. Here's a kind of a fun spectrum of flavors to maybe think about as we're tasting a couple of wines, 14 and 15, that have just a little bit more development. Those 16s are so inviting, but the 16 is such a lay down vintage. It's such a big, massive vintage and incredible quality. You might prefer the 14 tonight, because a young 16, where it has all this potential, is still pretty naive and hasn't really developed a lot of charm and complexity. It might even be in a little bit of a lay down mode. 15 is kind of in there too, but some of the off vintages, I would almost prefer to even drink 17 that's coming out here or is out at this moment, than maybe of some of the 15s and 16s that are quite expensive, because these off vintages, 14 and 17, when I call them off, it's not that they were horrible. Some producers just didn't rise to the occasion. But a lot of these producers just made less wine. They probably declassified a lot more of it to the Rosso level, which they can sell quicker and get it out of their inventory and move on. And then they kind of just take their best parcels and make beautiful 14s and 17s. And honestly, sometimes I like those even more than the big, massive, too young 15s and 16s, which really need a decade to get to a spot where you feel like proud to open them up and see them hit their potential. So as promised, we're starting off with Altesano as our first wine. It's a 95-point wine from Robert Parker. And I'm going to move some things around on my screen. There we go. And 15 looked like it was going to be tough. I mean, there were some things happening in 15 that just weren't like leading to a lot of confidence. And then all of a sudden, here comes September, and a long, warm, dry September really dried things out and made just a crazy, great 2015. And everyone was like, oh, wow, that was quite a ride, because it didn't look like it was going to happen. It really didn't. It took a pretty amazing finish to a tough year. And everyone made some beautiful 15s. It's a great vintage for Brunello de Montalcino. And we'll talk about the other vintages as we come up on them in wines. But Altesano Vineyard, 17 hectares, about 30, almost 40 acres. A little bit of altitude. That's measured in meters, so about 750 feet in elevation, south facing, sedimentary clay and sand. They do grow other grape varieties on the property, and a lot of these producers, in maybe they're lesser, the exposition is not optimal for a great Brunello. So they'll plant on the land that they own. They'll plant a little Chardonnay, Vermentino, Viognier, Trebbiano. They'll make little white wines, dessert wines, things like that. Maybe even a modern red blend using a little Merlot and Cabernet. And that gives them opportunities to really, monetize the entirety of their estates. But they're not going to plant Cabernet where great Brunello could be planted. They're not going to plant Viognier or anything like that, because it's going to fetch pennies on the dollar compared to what great Brunello will fetch. But they do grow other grapes on Altesano's property. And this property, they had some really good luck in 2002. That would have been a golden moment to make an acquisition up in this area, and that's what happened here. The Carpezano actually bought Altesano from the original family, and Altesano had a very good but very traditional reputation for the styling of the wines. Really long aging, beautiful, almost Bordeaux style in the way these wines are built. There's a refinement and an elegance, a finesse to these wines, but they do require some patience. And I would say on opening of this wine, the 15, it really appeared that it was pretty quiet. That's what I would call it. You could, I tasted the 15 on release, which would have been in late 19, early 2000, I guess. So it's been a couple of years in the bottle, but I wouldn't say that the needle has moved all that much at the time I opened and tasted these wines. But I do think that this is a great wine to own and a great, beautiful, elegant wine. And what I'm curious to know is, with the decantation that we've provided, how is it showing at this time? And I really think I'd like to open up the floor a little bit and get some comments. Let me just finish with a couple more slides, and then we'll chat. If you don't want to come out and you just want to post a note, like Maria, she's been commenting. Thank you, Maria. gets better with a little more air. So swirling it around on the glass, waking it up, letting it relax a little bit. Okay, so the comments about this wine: no longer overwhelmed by wood, they were able to display the unique characteristics of the fruit and soft tannins, perfect balance. Um, they're absolutely not content resting on their laurels. And Altesano, the first Montalcino estate to introduce the concept of cru wines, so meaning single vineyards, and they own some really important ones. And those wines tend to sell for close to double what their blended wine sells for. This one's kind of the value, but it's a conglomerate of all of their estates. They don't peel off and separate the single vineyards and remove all the quality from this wine. This represents the brand, and this wine is made for the world of distribution, and they'll make a couple hundred cases of the single vineyards. So really important brand from a historical standpoint, in that their ownership, their stewardship, their quality have always been very high. They came to the idea of releasing single vineyards, and really a time when that wasn't happening. And so truly a finesse effort as well, which Thomas, I like that, quite elegant. I think that's almost a feminine elegance to it. And I'm not always a big fan of using those feminine masks. I do use them a lot because I think there's some application, but in this, with this perspective, you have to appreciate that we're going to have a pretty big range of wines tonight, and this has a softer hand. It has a more a prettier side of Montalcino. They're not going for overripe, super extracted, super powerful, super muscular, but there is some restraint here, and some like patience is required to really let this thing kind of get to roll. It does even hit another gear with some great food, and of course, probably one of the great opportunities to enjoy beef is with a Brunello di Montalcino and a giant piece of meat like a bistecca, or something that they would call a Florentine. And if you ever get to Tuscany, you go to the great butcher in Tuscany, and hang out with him and have a meat fest at his restaurant. It's a pretty spectacular idea to have a bottle of Brunello with that opportunity. I don't know that I mentioned that this is a DOCG wine. So there are DOC and there's IGT, which is maybe a more broader category to allow for a lot of things. There's some very good IGT wines. There's some decent DOC wines, and there's amazing DOCG wines, the guarantee level of the Italian organization, the Garantita, Brunello, and that's where they have those rules in place about how long in wood, how long in the bottle, how long at the winery. Here's a very typical Shay with a large barrique and the small barrique, and the way they blend those and put wines away for a longer period of time, slowing down the oxidation process, moving them into the larger wood after the final blend, the final cepage is created, putting them in that larger wood for another year or two and letting it just slowly melt together. That's the idea behind the winemaking. So let's break for a moment from our slideshow and get some comments. If you want to come out and talk about what you smell, what you are seeing in the glass, I'd love to hear from you. Natalie, everything arrived okay?
It did. It was a little dicey. We had an ice storm tonight, so
That's the challenge.
UPS showed up and we were salting the driveway for him to be able to safely walk my wines up the driveway, but they arrived.
Remind us where are you zooming with us from?
Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska.
So in Los Angeles this week, it may be the coldest winter, maybe week of all time. Like I heard there might this weekend, it might, is it, because I'm in Japan, I don't know. Is it snowing in Santa Monica? Is that what I read? That is actually a thing.
I don't know if it's quite that extreme, but I think they said snow in like the Hollywood Hills or something like that.
Yeah, Santa Monica Mountains is what
Oh, there you go.
the headline that I read on the weather report was snow in Santa Monica Mountains. But I've heard 80-degree, what was it? The temperatures are like insane. And so UPS has been sending out lots of warnings about, so I think we got this in just under the, in the nick of time, because the worst part of this is like tonight, tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah,
so
we were sitting on our deck on Sunday afternoon, like all afternoon, and it was like a beautiful 52 to us.
how cold is it now?
Well, it's definitely below 30 because it's freezing. So
Wines were
chilly. It's
wines
definitely
were
chilly.
okay when they arrived. They weren't frozen like popsicles.
Nope.
Okay.
No, but they didn't need the fridge after they arrived.
I bet.
Just let them air.
I think the freezing temperature of a red wine is down in the like 28-degree mark. So, we just absolutely refuse to ship when it's colder than 30, but ask for a waiver just in case. You never know.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't have to worry about that anymore. This should be the last storm to go through. It's got to be.
What do you think of this first wine, Natalie?
I really like it. A lot of it reminds, a lot of dried fruit, some fig maybe is kind of the notes that I'm getting.
Is it starting
Very old. It just feels old, old Italy.
Yeah, kind of like a leather bound book, or are there any balsamic notes starting to emerge a little bit? Might even smell some of the rockiness of this region. There's some particular minerality that really kind of makes these wines, kind of referred to as mountain wines or hillside wines. The not only is the exposition in the soil a big part of that, but that really restrictive growth that you get on a steep hillside covered in stone changes the pH of these wines drastically, makes them really resistant to oxidation and advancement. Ben, what are you smelling and tasting in the first wine? You look like an Italian wine lover.
I'm Italian, but I don't know. But I actually started trying. I signed up for this class in part because I feel like I don't know enough about the wine of my like heritage. It's like I just know they all start with B, and it's like I can never keep them straight. So I've been trying to make a concerted effort lately to learn a little more. You said leather, and that's what I got. That my first sip of it was like a little more on like the bitter end, a little more of those kind of like leathery type of things. But I feel like as it's opened a bit, it's sort of smoothed out a little.
Gia, you're a wine student of note. What other notes are you getting on the advancement of this first one?
Hi, I am an Italian wine newbie completely. So how would you compare this to a Chianti? I think I am surprised how like rich these wines are, like very full body and
yeah. I think some levels of Chianti, like the Gran Selezione, can approach the power and the depth of a Brunello de Montalcino, but I believe I would classify the Chianti as kind of a more acid, acidic, teasingly high tannins in Chianti without the power and the depth, and the color and the richness of the Brunello. Brunello just tends to take all of those volume knobs up 2 or 3 points that Chianti just can't appear to achieve that type of decadence. And so there's more crazy aromatics that you can get. And I really believe that the minerality, that hillside, that maybe it's a little closer to the ocean that's giving us some of that too. It's probably 100 reasons why. But yeah, Brunello is certainly a bigger, more flashy. And some of the brands really lean into that a little bit, and some lean the other way and kind of pull back. And I think Altesano is kind of on the more conservative side of the Brunello fence, in that they make a really elegant, almost feminine style. And so that's why we decided to start with this particular wine, and allow some of the others to kind of show you, but this one rolls right down the center. It's just really pretty, and a very wonderful, dependable Brunello de Montalcino from a great vintage. And that's how we wanted to start it off. No excuses, no reasons why this or that. It's just absolutely a benchmark brand that you can count on, one that has great land holdings, wonderful stewardship, a great reputation. And anytime you can find this wine, you can count on, and it's something that kind of keeps you right down the center lane, though.
Wow, if this is center lane, looking forward to drinking the other ones.
There you go. Fantastic. Thomas, thank you. A pure expression of Sangiovese, a great wine. Yeah, getting it done here in California is a challenge for us. And I don't know if any of you remember the Cal Italian movement that we had in the 1990s. We were trying to discover that. I have recently added a wine to our website from a pretty good Italian family called Muscardini in Sonoma, and they make a Sangiovese Cab Merlot blend that I think they can be very proud of. And quite honestly, at $30 is like a no-brainer. It's a beautiful package and a great price point. Something that probably the price point they can actually get a more aggressive with, because they're on the Sonoma and not on the Napa side of things, where that's where Napa was trying to go to Sangiovese. And it's probably about as great of an idea as Charles Shaw himself, the dentist, 1978, planning Gamay in Napa Valley, which of course led to his financial problems of wine. You know, being a fairly wealthy man, as a doctor, a dentist, he too could not survive the damage and went into bankruptcy. All right, let us continue with wine number 2. And while I go into my slideshow, we've had the pleasure of having a really good team in place for quite a while during the pandemic. And we're entering into Learn About Wine team, call it 23.0, because we've got some new team members that are helping us out now. And they've been working hard for me, and I just really want to thank them for all their efforts and energies. We keep a lot of plates moving on sticks, moving at a pretty high speed, and we got a lot of things we're trying to do. We have to keep a team. I got to keep the calendar pretty active, and they're doing a good job coming up to speed very quickly. So our next wine, I will tell you, is been just one of like my all-time favorite producers. And it's not for, I mean, this is a really great brand, but it's so hard to get, and it's so dear. I mean, there's a little higher price point involved with this producer. They have an incredible reputation amongst the wine elitists, but it's kind of the brand that you maybe haven't heard of before. Can you see the slide? Is it showing up on your computer? La Renaille. I just want to make sure you're looking at what I'm trying to make sure I'm showing you on my
Yep.
lap.
We
Sometimes
can see it.
okay, good. This is much more of a terroir story than even some of the other producers. Maybe a little bit more in common with the first wine than the other two that we're going to taste today. Kind of in the same boat. As 2002 appears to be the year that a lot of things started to really happen in Brunello, and I think it was because of the release of the 1997 Brunello di Montalcino that was like released in 2002, and all of a sudden the world woke up to Brunello di Montalcino with 1997 getting just unbelievable scores, and that launched the interest in this region. And so you'll see a lot of things, acquisitions and moves and purchases that have these dates because of those vintages. And obviously since 2002, it's been straight uphill like a really well-run internet company on the stock exchange, moving from the lower left to the upper right. And that's what's happening here as well. So this is a brand that has several different parcels, and they take a really parcel approach to making their wine. They have different blends, different levels. They have a reserva, they have single vineyards. None of their productions are in massive quantity, but they have this really slow aging approach using large Slovenian bote, which are those big oak tanks. And that's how the maturation's really kind of extended. Also, the grape growing here, just super high standards, and really keeps the terroir as the star of the show, not the ripeness level, not the oak content. So that's one of the things that I've really loved about this wine. They are organic, and everything done by hand, of course. 36 months is time in wood, those larger barrels. They tend to release their wines about a year after everybody else as well. So I was buying the 15s when the 16s were coming out. That probably could go out and get some of the 16 now if it's available to me. It's a little bit of a political dance with the importer, trying to get these wines. Buy some of this, get some of that. We'll give you some La Ragnai to buy. So it's a little bit of that, and that's definitely a necessary evil in the wine industry, which I understand fully. But part of what makes this wine hard to get. Just stunningly beautiful landscapes. And if you go to Brunello, this is just another one of them. It looks like, castles in the sky, and just dramatic sloping slopes, and the olive trees, the chaparral that's surrounding the vineyards, just really breathtaking scenery. And I would say, even from this might be like a great starting point to discuss the difference between Chianti and Brunello di Montalcino. It's just the fact that Chianti is on like soft rolling hills that are almost flat. There's lots of stone in Chianti, so it's not a lack of minerality at all. But the extremes bring extreme conditions to the vines, and it torques the grape growing. It gives us a better expression, bigger expression, maybe not instead of better, and bigger expression of that, the color, the tannin, the structure. Everything's just amped up a little bit more, and it's because of the altitude, the hillside, the slope, all that stuff. And frankly, I love the discussion about this, because as a Zinfandel grower, this is exactly what I look for in my Zinfandel fruit as well, is to be able to see everything just get to an optimal spot and have at the same time incredible balance and ageability. Let's talk about La Renai, because it is a great brand, but not a lot of content out there, not a lot of website stuff, pictures of the family, deep stories. So let's just get into the wine and have you guys tell me what you are smelling and tasting in wine number 2. You can even compare it to number 1 and share with me what your thoughts are. Mark, how are the wines treating you and your wife there? I'm going to ask you to unmute, Mark. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Not yet. Try one more time.
Okay. Anyway, just tasting a little bit. I think the town was getting.
Sorry, Mark. I'm having a hard time with your signal. Hopefully, you can hear us okay, but you're chopping pretty hard there. So I'll.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now it sounded better, right?
So, okay. The first question is: can you show a picture of the label? 15. Is this a 15? A little bit more.
Sorry, Mark. That's just not working out. Some connection issue. Your audio is just really torturing us. So apologize. Someone else?
That's okay. I think my mute, but
Okay, Mark. I gotta mute you, buddy. I'm sorry. It's just really interfering.
No problem. No problem.
Okay. Thomas, what are you seeing in glass 2, buddy? I know you're really into this. You got to have some opinions here.
I do. The first one was I would describe. I think you hit it on the nose with feminine. This is less feminine, certainly from that standpoint. A little richer, little more fruity taste to it. I'm not good at describing what fruits I taste, sadly, but I'm definitely getting that. And as it opens up in the glass, it becomes more unctuous, which is interesting as well. Really nice wine.
Excellent. I like that. I think that's a good call. So it definitely has a little bit more of a macho structure, power, leans into those tannins a little bit, gets a little bit more sharp angles, not some of that soft elegance, but some maybe a little more chewiness.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary, I know you're not on camera, but I hope you're tasting these wines with us. If you have any comments, love to hear how they're treating you. Jill, are you tasting with us tonight? Love to have you tell us what you see in wine number 2.
I really like it. Even though I do smell the old, the taste is very smooth. You can taste the tannins, but it's very different than American wine because you don't have the preservatives that you do. So it's a lot nicer.
Well, there probably are similar preservation tactics. I think Americans get a little blamed for doing stuff like that, but those practices are pretty common. The sulfur that we use in bottling wine is pretty consistent. And even in the vineyards, there was a time period where corporatization was taking over, and big brands and big winemaking techniques to maximize yield, etc. But in the fine wine business, no. The only thing that really differentiates California wine from anywhere else in the world is just the weather that we have here, and then some of the ideas that we carry forward in the winemaking and the way those wines are presented. But I do think that because of this slow idea that these wines have a state that they achieve with, kind of that takes time. And no California producer is releasing their 2016 or 17 right now. They're all 19, 20, 21, 22s are even coming out soon. And so that there's an immediacy to our wines that gives California wines a chance to shine earlier, sooner, but they don't have that aging window always. But some of the great producers do, and they take all the same slower approaches. And so the Italian wines that we're tasting tonight, though, these are built like battleships, and there's no way to decorate it any differently. These are big Italian battleships of Sangiovese and tannin that they're basically working with the tools that they have to bottle them, and the time requirement is actually working in their favor, because they know that they cannot achieve a great wine if people start taking shortcuts, and it will absolutely destroy the reputation of Montalcino if people start taking shortcuts. And if you don't put rules down, people will start taking shortcuts. So this is just a really exemplary wine for the world to show what a well-structured, well-intended set of rules can create in a wine making that doesn't detract from the artisticness of each of these brands. They each have their own style, each have their own vineyards, and they come to popularity because of that style and that individuality. But they kind of wear their individuality like badges. I hope you enjoyed number 2. I'll be curious and ask you at the end if you want to tell me which one was your favorite and maybe why. And you might want to keep price point, stuff like that in mind as we taste through some of these. I quite honestly don't remember the price of the La Ragnai, but I'm going to look back in a minute and we'll take a look at that. But let me go into the slideshow now and get into our third wine. So this is my case for tougher vintages like 14. This is a top house. This is a great producer. This is a tough vintage, 2014. Rain, cold. I mean, it threw every winemaking challenge at Tuscany that it could in 14. And I really like a lot of the 14s because they had to work so hard to make them good. In challenging vintages, great producers can make great wine because they probably only use their great vineyard sources, their greatest spots and the top hillsides. And a lot of them take their single crews that they sell for a lot of money, and they even make less of them if they even bother to make them, and they blend them down, they replete them down into the main wine, because this is the wine that has to make it to all the accounts everywhere. You might have fewer cases, but at least you get them some. Those higher end cases are more whimsical, artistic expressions to really let them swing for the fence. But in a tough finish like 14, they may not have made them. The season began with a mild winter, which led to early bud break and a head start on the growing season. Sounds wonderful, right? But then you had unseasonable cold and wet weather, and it really kind of spread the flowering set all over the place. So you had clusters appearing in one spot and flowers appearing in the other. So you had different rates of growing, and that's really what created the obstacle for greatness in 14 was the diversity of ripeness levels. And what we look for in winemaking is homogeneity. We want the vineyards to kind of move along at the same rate and achieve the same thing so that we can pick with certainty and not necessarily, you just can't go through the vineyard 6 times and make 6 different pickings and with any kind of success anyway. So that, and at the end of 14, unlike 15 had this amazing hot month that dried out and just made 15 sensational, and that never came in 14. Sorry for the slideshow moving around here. We'll go through it. Here's a look at their steep hillside vineyard and a good look at that soil, that's sand, it's clay, it's stone, mostly schist. And that is really a key part of the discussion of what makes Brunello de Montalcino a little different than Chianti too. That schist element is not relevant in most of the Chianti zone. Another amazing vineyard shot. 16 hectares, similar size property to some of the others. Significant enough, but not so massive. You may or may not have even have heard of this producer before. And that's what I love about Brunello too, is there's so many little small family vineyards working to be excellent. That's kind of what makes this a great spot for wine too. Beautiful, clean place of maturation in the larger, those are the botes, the large wood tanks, often made from Slovenian wood. That's kind of what they do, are these large barrels. And there are French oak versions of them, but the Slovenian wood just seems like that's what the big producers of Brunello just went into. And so that's pretty much the standard. And still cold forest oak, Slovenia, France, they all make really great wood barrels. But the Slovenians really take advantage of the large format being their specialty. Cellar. So 14, as you poured it in the glass, you could see the color was different. You can smell more advancement here. You could feel a leanness to the wine. It doesn't have the ripeness, but this wine has style and finesse and zest and character, and it has some complexity that is showing off the quality of the brand. It is let me see if there's any comments here. Still seeing more comments on wine 2, but nothing really on 3 yet. Brighter fruit than the others. Yeah, I agree. Probably with 14, you didn't have the ripeness to extract. So you had to have a softer hand playing with that fruit, understanding it a little bit, how much wood impact. Maybe a little more time in the bigger woods, less time in the smaller wood, keeping some of that freshness there. There's some ideas that are going through my head as what choices they could make in the wine making to really allow this softer, pretty wine to kind of hit the mark here. We are approaching 8 years old on this wine, so the color has moved from more of that reddish color into more of a rustic color, a little more, you might even see just kisses of brown starting to shine through on the rim, a little thinner in total color. This is not a vintage to go heavy on extraction. It's a vintage to play softly with the fruit that you were able to get, and to make a prettier wine expression than a more powerful one. And the intention of this vintage is to even drink it while you wait for a great vintage to advance. Now, this wine was released right pre-pandemic, at the pandemic moment, and the 15s were kind of, people were licking their chops waiting for the 15s and the 16s to come in. So 14 not only was a tough vintage, but precedes two great ones in a row. And like right now, we can even talk as, 18, 19, and 20 haven't arrived yet in the wine world, but buyers are already starting to make their plans as to which Brunellos they're going to start to seek out in the future, because you've got 3-4 years of data to start plotting out which wines you are going to take a bigger position on, etc. And that's mostly in the bigger distribution world, as the big distributors have to commit to hundreds of cases, etc. So we're always using the data, the information that we have, the reviews that start coming out. The reviewers go there and start tasting from the barrel around year 3 and 4, start talking, hinting. There's always the at harvest, reports that come out. Oh, things were looking really good in Brunello and Montalcino. Looks like this is going to be a winner. And that's, if they have great fruit, they tend to scream about it. And we're going to have some really good vintages here to work with. Different vintages each year. Everything's from 2015 to 2020 was not in a straight line. Everything's got a little personality behind it. But probably 22 is the next great vintage that we're going to hear about in Europe. 22 is looking pretty damn good and pretty big. So it's a good sign, and people start to really plot their course when they have a big vintage in the cellar. Maria, you said you're getting a bit of smoke and a little bitterness, kind of like I often think of a blood orange when I think of 14, orange peel, even toasted or roasted orange peel, kind of an interesting a note. And the cherry, kind of, I think about maraschino cherry, kind of like a preserved cherry in the nose of the wine.
Yeah, maybe that's because it didn't age as long.
It wasn't given the time in that small wood. It wasn't given the extraction time on the skins. There just wasn't much to extract, even if it was the same amount of time. It didn't have the material to really pull that kind of approach. So they had to kind of alter winemaking thoughts of harvest. Yeah. And what you were concerned with is trying to make a wine that wasn't really there. And then you make a hollow wine because you get all the wood tannins, because you're going to go through the same wood process as a great vintage, but there's not enough content there to handle that much wood. So you do have to kind of, have other ideas and work with the vintage to make it the best wine you can. I like the cleansing nature of this 14. The brightness and the acid just really cleanses. I think this is a great food wine in its state right now. I'd love to have it with, great piece of meat, like I said. Not everything is made for tomato sauce. This is not necessarily the type of wine I would promote with tomato sauce. This is the type of wine I would really, lean into pieces of protein. If you're not a meat eater, maybe it's eggplant. You can do some great stuff with eggplant for Brunello de Montalcino, mushrooms, tofu, things like that.
A
Yeah.
salmon too, salmon.
Sure. I love red flesh fish with this too. I love especially um some ways of doing like seared peppered tuna.
Mhm. Mm,
That was really great with this
yeah,
one.
definitely.
It handles a big red very well too. More tannin on this wine, you think? More tannin? Is it pretty tannic? Probably more apparent tannins because of the lack of the fruit intensity. So you still have the tannin, but don't quite have the other volume knobs to work with here with the color and the power. The support players kind of came in a little light in 14. But again, this producer is really solid at what they do. I love this brand. It's a brand I kind of count on, and it's if I go out to an Italian restaurant, I look at the list, and if you were paying for the wine, I'd probably go to the Brunello section. But if I was paying for the wine, we'd have to find an alternative Italian wine to buy. Italian wine like this on a wine list, you're easily looking at $200 for a Brunello at a top Italian restaurant.
Hmm. Hmm.
All right. Can I drop one more commercial on you guys? Because I have a great, I mean, super special trip to Sicily. And unfortunately, I lost a couple people that I was counting on coming with us. We had this trip basically sold full, and we dropped a party of 4 off of a group that was only supposed to have 14. So I've got 4 spots available to go to Sicily. We're at the end of April, and it is a beautiful trip. There's 2 parts to it. You can come for the main part, or you can do the intro, or you can do both. The intro is like 4 days on Mount Etna. And we're going to do these amazing volcanic experiences, tasting with some of the best in the business, hikes, and exploring the volcanic area, and picnics and amazing meals. And we're meeting the producers. That's on Etna. Those are the first couple days of the trip. We're looking at about April 19th, if I'm not mistaken. And then I think it's the 21st, 2nd, or 3rd that's the Sunday, late April, that we get together. So you could fly in anytime you want, meet up with us on that first day, and we'll come and get you. As part of the trip, when you land, we've got a service that's going to bring you to us, and all you got to do is get there. All you got to do is get to Sicily, and then we take care of you from there. We got all the hotels, all the appointments, all the meals and stuff that are listed on the website, where we've got chocolate experiences and cooking classes. Even if you go there early on the Etna side of the trip, we've got a day where we basically do the Godfather tour. We're going to go with an expert on the movie and see the different sets, and they're not even sets, they're actually really historic buildings that they shot the movie The Godfather at. I'm a huge Godfather fan, so that's a must. And then if you watch the TV show on HBO, you might have fallen in love with the unbelievable hillsides and countrysides and seascapes and views. That's the entire island, and we're going to circle the entire island on the main trip. So if you have any interest at all, let us know. Single, double, it's great. We've kind of reworked the single supplement a little bit because people that were traveling individually were feeling it was a little heavy. So we worked on that a little bit, but it's not a lot of room on this trip financially for us to do much, because Sicily is about as hot a destination as there is in the world, thanks to the TV show White Lotus. It is blown up going to Sicily, and we have to give the rooms back. So I'm making a plea. If anybody wants to go, let me know. Final wine. Am I sharing my screen?
You are.
All right. Another favorite producer, Ciro Pesente Pellegrilli. This is one of 3 wines I carry from this producer. This is some of the highest scoring wine in available almost every year when they get the scores out. These guys are at the top of the food chain. This is their Normale bottling. They make an old vine, which I have only a couple bottles of. And they make a super high-end reserve as well. It's got 100 points, by the way. And so I write a couple of wine lists in the city of Los Angeles. And if you go to, there's a really great restaurant that I've been writing the wine list for the last couple of months. And I can talk about it now because if I sent you there a month ago, it wasn't actually my wine list. But it's right on the corner of Sunset and Vine, and inside of a private club with a hotel called the Astor, and they have a restaurant on top that you look out over the view. And give me 1 second. When you look out over the view at on top of the Astor from Lemon Grove Restaurant, which, by the way, this could change at any point in time, but they want people to find out about this place. So if you go to dinner on Sunset and Vine, it's one of the few places in the world that comps your valet parking. So that's one reason just to go. 2 is the view. You're looking at you're on the rooftop. It's probably 8 stories. So you got this amazing view up there, and a lot of it's the backside of Scientology signs, but it's really a great setting. And then you've got a award-winning chef Bourguignon, who won Top Chef, and his food is sensational. So I was really excited to get this project, and it's taken a few months for the current wine list to kind of work its way through and allows some creativity there. It'll be a work in progress for the next year. I hope I'm there for a year. Usually I'm there for 3, 4, 5, 6 months and I've done my job and tap out, but this is kind of an ongoing project. And I hope to have a nice association there. If any of you live in the Hollywood area, it is a private club as well. There's club floors. It's a great meeting space, great event space. And I'm hoping to be doing something at the building very, very soon. So stay tuned for more there. But I also, if you're into music, you're literally looking at Capitol Records building from the rooftop. And one of the things the building did when it first opened is they had a private concert with Duran Duran on the rooftop. And I just got hired and heard about it. So I figured out a way to wiggle into that. I was able to see that show. I'm really big into music, so that was cool. So here we've got a 17 wine. Oh no, this is the 16. It is. It says 17 on this label art, but this is a 16 vintage that we're tasting. And that's what I have in inventory. Just a little bit left though. And these 15 and 16s have been getting picked off for the last year or so, and they're kind of disappearing from the marketplace. 17 is not a 15 or a 16 vintage. There are some really fun, delicious wines made in 17, but these long aging vintages like 15 and 16 kind of come around and stake their flag in the ground. This is a benchmark Brunello. Here's the beautiful estate of Ciro Pesente, family owned and operated. Two vineyards, very different areas of Montalcino. So he's got 2 opportunities, and that's why they can make different bottlings and do kind of the approach that they take. They also make a very serious Rosso. Oh, and I was kind of talking about Lemon Grove because I just put this wine on the Lemon Grove list as well. And I think actually it was a 14 vintage that I got. It's really nice to have wines that have a little age to put on a wine list. So putting a 16 like this one on the wine list may be a little too premature. You might put it on the list because you have to. The bank says you got to sell it, but it's not really showing in a spot where you're like, this is ready to drink. This is fun to drink. It's fun to drink 2 ounces of it, but I don't know if a full bottle is like, this is like a baby still. But very enjoyable. Dark, powerful, built in a bigger, more, certainly a richer style. Another incredible view from their vista looking out over the valley. What are your thoughts?
This does seem young. Yeah, and it seems like in a couple of years, this will be the complete package.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost, you can almost taste, smell, and sense this wine in separate pieces at this moment. You've got some wood aromas, you've got some spices, you've got some big fruit, and you've got some serious tannin, and they're still kind of working their way towards collectively presenting themselves, gaining some wisdom, time in the bottle. Yeah, so a bit young is a good way to say it. Yeah, for sure. The floral note, yeah, that's kind of interesting too, Gia. You noted some floral, and I always smell that really distinctive Italian set of herbs and spices. A lot of like the same type of smells you might get in some dried salumis or some of peppercorn spices, herbs, and
Basil, oregano.
yeah, oregano, basil, that kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah. I think it was very smooth, very smooth. Very light. It's very light, I guess I should say.
It's lighter on its feet because of that. It's got everything kind of turned up to such a level that it may even appear to be a lighter wine, but in fact it's bigger. But it kind of presents itself in a more massive way, and it's a big one.
When is, I mean, there's no wrong time, I suppose, to drink this wine, but when is the right time to drink this wine, Ian?
Well, a wrong time, yeah, there probably is no wrong time, but at its price point, is it wise to pop a $70+ bottle when at that price point there's so many other options? So I really think the better moment for a wine like this is when it's something magic happens in the 10th year. It's just, this is a 10-year wine. So 2026 is going to be the year that this wine hits its, this one's still in first or second gear, and you need to let it get revving up to 5th gear and really moving along in that 10th year. And Bordeaux does the exact same thing, and Great Burgundy does the exact same thing. It's a mindset. When they're making these European wines, they're working with the tools that they have and the mindset that they have, and that is, hey, we're not in a hurry here. This wine's got to wait 5 years before it's even presented, and we want it to be the kind of the ambassador for us as a producer when we die. This is like gotta represent the family name for a very long time. So they build them for long term for sure. All right, so let me know in the chat box, if you can, which one you preferred tonight. And if you preferred the 16 just because you think it's the best wine, that's okay. If you liked the charm of the 14s, or maybe the the position that the 15s are in, and which one. You can say 1, 2, 3, 4 if you want, or you can steal the names from the very first chat that we made up there, listing all the wines. See if I can do that again just to make it easier. Gary, Mary, Miranda, which one did you guys like? Got a La Renaille from Natalie. Okay, Maria, which 15? Didn't we have 2 15s? Well, it's fun to taste wines like this side by side, to be able to get some perspective. And I like doing this even in larger number. If you ever come to one of our dinners, we have next week, we have the 100-point dinner at Jar Restaurant. And it's literally like 17, 18 wines that got 100 points. I think one of them got 99 or 98. But they're all going to be served blind. I serve them 3 at a time. I tell you what the 18 wines are on the website and in a brochure that night, but I don't tell you which glass they're in. And we taste them. We pick a favorite, and we ask you if you think you know which one's which. But some of these wines I've maybe only tasted once in my life. Wines like Hill of Grace, which is just a legendary wine from Australia, almost $1,000 a bottle. 2007 Screaming Eagle will be part of that lineup. We'll taste Harlan. We'll taste Scarecrow. We'll taste the 100-point Ciro Pacente Brunello de Montalcino, Chateau Aubryon, 1982, is it? I can't remember which vintage we're pouring in that lineup. Just an insane list of really awesome wines. And we have a 5-course meat fest. If you're not into meat, we can certainly do a different menu for you. But it's at Jar Restaurant, which is kind of an institution in Los Angeles, right on Beverly. A great restaurant. Suzanne Track is the chef, and I've known her for a long time. She's worked in some great restaurants before she got Jar going. And take a look at the wine list if you're interested in tasting all that greatness side by side. It's an incredible opportunity to do that. I think the votes are in. We've got number 6 or number 4, that is, getting some love. I really like the diversity. Like them all. Good. Yeah, I mean, it's not like there was a bad wine tonight. It's kind of like picking from your children which one you like the best. Each of them have their better days. And Pacente and Sesente kind of split the room, I think. That's kind of cool. Altozano, it's pretty close. Even I got Ben like number 1. So Altozano, Miranda like number 1, 3 and 4 for Gary, number 2 for Maria, number 2 for Natalie. What am I going to do? It's like right down the middle. So they all win. One person even was bold and voted for 2 and 4. So that really helped me. Great to spend this evening with you. All right, everybody, have a great night. And from Japan, arigato, and I'll talk to you later.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.